Hello everyone, it's Mish here and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, thanks for stopping by, and if you are returning, thank you so much for coming back and hanging out this morning. I am going to continue today on the Junk Journal January. If you are new, I am doing the Junk Journal January that Meg journals. She puts out the prompts. Leave a tag for her in the description box below. And I am still working on my Christmas journal because I did not get it all finished in December, and I'm having a lot of fun doing the prompts. So today's prompts that I'm going to be doing are bubble and tissue. That's where I left off. So I'm going to do bubble and tissue today. Excuse me. So when I started to think about bubble, I immediately thought of some charms that I was working on over Christmas. And the charms, I had got a bunch of these, the pop bottle tops that I'd never used. I opened up one of my drawers and I saw that I had all these pop bottle tops. And so what I did is and they're not that expensive. You can get a whole lot of them for not that much on Amazon, I think. And I just went around and I punched, these are I think 1 inches, a bunch of circles out of different things. I did go on the computer a couple times just to do some of the little words, and I just did this in PowerPoint, and I just made a 1-inch circle and then just put some text on it. Some things I just found that were small, and I just took a bunch of those things, and ironically an owl popped up, which this year is the year of the owl for me, which I think is just sweet. A little, I'd say it's a woman, but a man, or it doesn't matter, but with their little coat on and a little shopping bag and a Santa hat. So how you can do this is with the bottle top, you could fill this with UV resin. You could use this pearl, glossy accents, and fill it up with glossy accents. You'll need to wait a while for that to dry. But I kind of cheated with that in that when I ordered these, I also received a bunch of these little 1-inch bubbles, and they're adhesive, and you just take them off the thingy and stick them down. So that was pretty easy. So I made a bunch of those. I just used a little hole punch that I got at Michael's in the jewelry section. They punched really easy, so I just punched a little hole, and then I put for some of them, I started to put the jump rings on. So that's an idea for bubble, and it's a great way to add a little hardware, something to your journal. And what I did with that one is I made a little notch here, or not a notch, but I made a little tab, and I just put a little eyelet there, and I hung my little owl, my little Christmas owl off the side, so that he kind of jingles a little bit, but he's not that far out there that I can't put him in my bookcase. So that's one kind of way to add a little bubble. The other thing that I did is I took those little these things, and I'd already had some little ornaments that were, about a 1-inch shape, which is kind of cool. So I just put them on there, so when I turn my page, it looks a little bit liquidy. It looks like they're really ornaments there. The other thing I did on this page is I just added some greenery to the top of that, and I think that page is pretty much finished. So then I think that's all that I did with these. So I made that, and I used that for an ornament. You could also cheat, and there are things that are bubble, that resemble a bubble. At Michael's this year, you could have got these little ornaments that are already domed out with a little bubble. And then in my stash, I've had for a while, I've had these, I bought them because it said Brad, And when I got home, I realized it wasn't the brad that I was thinking. These are just the self-adhesive brads. They don't actually have a post that go through the page, but they are bubbled out, and they're quite dimensional. So that's another way you could kind of put bubble into your journal. The other thing that I had when I was running through my stash that I've had for a couple years is these. I got these at Michael's, ouch, as well. It's called Design a Button. And I think this was in the kids section, and I think I got it for like cheap, like $3 or something. I don't know what they are now, and with this, you just take the button apart. So you take the sides apart, and you have the back, and then you have this dome, which to me kind of looks like a bubble floating through the air. So I took the dome, that little bubble part, and I made a little shaker. So how I did it is I just took a piece of patterned paper that I had, and this actually was from a DigiKit, and I gently, in the middle, just put my little bits. These are shimmery sequins. These were from Stampin' Up, and I liked them because they were quite fine, but I did add a couple little red ones from my stash. And then I took my Elmer's glue. Now you don't want to take something like a Tombow that dries sticky. So Tombow's great for a lot of things, but it does dry sticky. With the Elmer's glue, it doesn't. So when you shake your sequins around, if there's any little bits of glue that seeped along the edge, then they don't stick to it. So it makes a nice little kind of bubbled shaker card. I use a little bit of white tack, so that I could pick up my dome bit, and that way I could place it exactly where I wanted it. I just put a little bit of Elmer's glue, and I use the glue all around the edge of the thing. Now before I put the glue down, I did take a little bit of sandpaper, and so for here, you can just, that's a good way to hold on to something. I did take a little bit of sandpaper and just roughed up the edge. Then I went around with a little bit of glue, and then exactly where I wanted it, I put it down. And then I had it in my little box here. I had it sitting on here with the glue. And then once I had it where I wanted it, I just took a little bit of washi and put around it. And then I forget what I put on there. I put something heavy-ish that it would just press down on it just enough to make sure that it would stick. And I came up with this little one. So I have this little shaker, and I know exactly where I want this to go. I had wanted a little bit of something on this page here. And this in the background says December, Happy Holidays, and I thought it would go perfectly right there. And I don't need anything underneath it. If you want to put a mat or a layer, that would be fine. Yesterday was Sunday, today's Monday. I'm hoping to post this today. And when I finished working in here yesterday, I left my glue open. So let's see if it's going to work. Yep. And the only time this plugs up, this is Elmer's, is if I leave the top off it. Otherwise, it's perfect. Now, if I want to get this exactly where I want it, I'm going to use that glue hack again. Or not the glue, but the white tack, or whatever you want to call it. So I want to make sure my December's straight. Which it is. Okay, so then that's one way you could use those pins, is just as a dome. And then the second way is every December, it's my birthday, and my parents and I, my father and my stepmother, usually do a Swiss chalet thing. So this year, I actually bought the family the family size chicken dinner. It feeds 4, I think. And I picked it up and I went over to their place and we had a nice little dinner at their place. And I really love that. And at Swiss Chalet, I'm not sure if, I imagine this is an American thing too. You guys can let me know, but you always get a Lindor box of chocolates. And the last few years it's been shaped like a little milk carton. And I think they're so cute. So I wanted to keep a piece of this in my journal. And so what I did is I cut out a scallop from my die cuts. So I have a die cut this size. And I just positioned it, put it through the die cut. But then on the back, I did a little bit of journaling. And I thought this would be a great little addition to my journal. And I'm going to put it, I knew exactly where I wanted to put it, for now anyway, is I want to put it so that it's on here. And I was thinking, if I put it right around there, I still have to add stuff to this little folio, but... So, and then I can tighten it as much as I need to make it kind of tight. But this is, I mean, you could put it anywhere you want it to. But this is where I kind of wanted it. I liked the colors blend. And I may do something, I may actually put, I think I might, put a little piece of material maybe in the background or up top here so that it doesn't interfere with the bow and have it up there. So that the bow's kind of underneath it. But, so that's one idea. The other idea that you can do is you can just take the button, and then I had a bunch of little templates here. So this is the size that actually fit. But I thought if I was going to do a collage, I might want it a little bit bigger. I just went to some scrap paper. This came off of just some of that Michael's craft paper. The little paper label it has. Anyways, I just cut that off because I thought that would be cute as a background when it's in your button, so that you'd see kind of like that background. But then you could just take all your little bits that you have, whatever you have on your desk, or little images, and then you can make your own little collage that can then go in here. You could also put a picture of your family or your friends or loved ones. And what I did before I put the domes down is I made sure I had cleaned them up so that they were clean and pristine. So that's another way you could add sort of, quote, a bubble to your journal. And the last way is that you could use the glossy accents, like I said, or what I use today, because I haven't used it in a long time, is your ultra thick embossing powder. So the way that this works is you just take your something that will make it stick. You can use your Versamark. You could actually even use some of your Tombow glue because it dries sticky. You could use other ink pads. But I took some of my images and I just embossed them. The thing with the embossing is it does make it curl a little bit. So if you don't like that, you can try to emboss the backside too. One thing I did do when I finished embossing it is I put it underneath a glass mat, and then once it was dry, you gotta wait a few seconds for the plastic to set. But then it took out some of the warp. You could also do the back of it. And the thing with this is if it's kind of bent and you crack it, so you try to straighten it and it cracks, you can just heat emboss it again and it will just melt it and set it again. Okay, it's not ruined by no means. Now you can't, I don't believe, do that with the glossy accents. If you use the glossy accents and it cracks, I don't think there's a quick fix for that. So just keep that in mind. But I then used one of those in my journal and I put it right here so that you can see it kind of has that shimmery, it just reminds me of like a little soap bubble or something. And then the last way that I use that embossing is I took a die cut, and I have one that cuts out sort of the outline, and then it cuts out the little letters. And I cut out the cheer. This is also a way that I use tissue. So I use tissue as a layer on the background just to make my letters pop. I did raise that up on a dimensional, and I put some of the metallic silver thread behind it. And I thought that that would just make a good little accent. If you do watch me, I was doing the one on the ribbon, and I had a couple pieces of ribbon and I couldn't remember where it went. And Norma, I think you said, oh, you'll find a place for it to go. And as soon as I finished the video, I did. It was here that I wanted to put some of that trim. I think that was the prompt, trim. And then I'm just going to make a wee little side pocket here. Now I have this here, and I've been debating of taking that off. But I did take it off and then just put like some trim there or something and leave this as a little pocket. But I did take it off, and I kind of like the extra dimension that it has in the journal. So I'm just going to center that there. And then that's going to be, and that's another way you can kind of add that bubble effect to your journal. Now this was a bit fussy, making those letters. The other thing I did with these letters is for this one here and this one here, this little ornament here, you can see it's really shimmery. What I did before I embossed it with this is I just added a little bit of glitter to the embossing powder. And then when the embossing powder set, it gave this, I don't think it picks it up on camera for this, but there's some glitter in these letters. But you can really see it in this. You can see a lot of the glitter there as opposed to the one without the glitter. So you can see like the difference there. Okay, so I think I've got bubble. I had 6 ways to do the bubble. So I had a couple ways with the pin, a couple ways with the bubble stickers, and a couple ways with the embossing powder. All right, so then the last thing I want to talk about is tissue. In the prompt, it didn't say tissue paper, it just said tissue. Technically, a napkin is tissue. So I had a piece of this tissue paper that came in one of my presents that I wanted to keep. I really love that, ho, ho, ho. So I have that, and then in my stash, I just had this piece of napkin. And I'd already pulled the backing off it, and it was just kind of sitting there. So I thought, well, I'm going to use those 2 things as part of my prompt. So you can use, obviously, tissue as sort of a background layer, which is that white tissue in the back is just tissue paper. And the thing with the tissue paper is it is translucent, so it will allow some of the stuff underneath to pop through. But I wanted to use this, and this technique that I used to make it durable, because you can't just put tissue paper so I want to use it as a pocket, right where the food is. I want to use it here as a pocket. So I couldn't really, excuse me, put that in as a pocket just as tissue, or it would rip in a minute. So I just took, and this is not my hack. This is not it's nothing special or that I invented, but it's just something that I do when I want to use something that's kind of fragile. And I guess this could go back to the fragile prompt too. I just take my matte medium and I just put it on my craft mat, and then I just brush on the matte medium. The one thing you do have to remember though is for the first coat, I usually kind of use one section at a time. So I would use this. I'd put on my matte medium, and then very gently I would lift it up and move it and just gently place it on the other side. If I don't do that, it tends to rip or tear when I try to pull it off the craft mat. So that's just what I do. I just put my matte medium on. I gently lift it up, move it over, and then let it dry. Then I turn it over and I do the back, and then I do the front again. And generally, once I have one side done, then it doesn't tend to stick as much. And then I just do the other side. I end up putting kind of 3 to 4 coats on it, just so that I know it's going to be good. And it almost makes it feel like a bit like oilcloth is what it feels like. It's got that kind of old-fashioned oilcloth. I kind of think this is kind of like without the printing, but what would be in Laura Ingalls in her windows. It would just be that oil skin where you couldn't really see out in the wintertime. If you're a Laura Ingalls fan, Little House on the Prairie. That was one of the first books that I was obsessed with. All right, so I want to pocket. The other thing is you want to make sure if you're going to cut it, you can cut it with your X-Acto knife or you can put it on here. But, and I didn't test this out, so let's just test a piece, that your blade is pretty sharp. Okay, so I need to just get a straight edge. So I'm going to do it maybe here. And you just want to go gently, but once I get a straight edge on one side, then I can straighten it up. So let's just try that. Yeah, so then that will cut through, no problem. So I'm going to have this as the bottom part. And actually the ho is probably about the right dimension, but I'm just going to cut it a little bigger just in case. Okay, and then let's get our edge here. Okay, and then, so I'm going to have the ho there. Do I want it this way? No, it has to go this way. Okay, and then I want it about, I think it's 8 inches. I always forget if it's 8 or 8 1/4. All right, so I want this about 8 inches. So I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut it just a little bit longer than 8. Okay. And then how wide do I want it? So I want it just a little bit wider than the ho-ho-hos. So I could put a little piece of trim there too. So let's make it about this wide. Okay, so then we have our little pocket, a little side tuck, farmer tuck, and that should fit on there pretty good. Okay, and then for me, what I'm going to use to put that down is I'm just going to use a little bit of score tape. I just want to make sure it's going to be on this side. Because I find that this holds really well. There we go. Okay. So I'm doing this this morning. So I work from 1 to 9 today. So I thought I would try and get a couple videos out this week. I tend to be a morning person, so I'm up and around in the morning. And after supper, I tend to just be vegging. I always do stuff in my chair as I'm watching television, but I'm always prepping or getting something ready for something. Okay, so then I'm just gonna, I'm gonna lay that. Oh, it's sticking here. I'm gonna get that corner down, flush. There we go. Okay, and then, so we've made that little tissue that we had, and you could, if it's a special little piece of tissue, maybe, you know, it's something that one of your kids or parents or something gave you, then you could always write a little journal card to go inside there. So that's my addition with the tissue. I still have this, and I have an idea for this, but I'm not quite sure, so I may use it in another prompt. So I hope you enjoyed that and you picked up some ideas. I think I've showed you everything. And yeah, so until we meet again, I hope you stay safe and well, and bye for now.